Hi, I'm Cassie and welcome to my kitchen. Today we're going to be making Goya Chanpuru, a dish from Okinawa whose main ingredient is Goya. In English, Goya is known as bitter melon or bitter gourd. I personally think that bitter gourd is much more fitting because to me, a melon is something that is sweet and that you can eat raw, which you definitely can't do with Goya. Goya is known as a superfood. It has a ton of vitamins, minerals, antioxidants. It's been known to lower blood sugar, lower cholesterol. The main point is that it is a really healthy food and is a tropical vine that generally grows in Asia, Africa, and the Caribbean. So of course, when I went to Okinawa, I had to try a dish with Goya in it. However, this is not the first time that I tried out Goya. One time, a few years ago, I tried out Goya Chanpuru and I didn't like it. It was bitter and it shocked me. However, the second time that I went down to Okinawa, I just really wanted to try it again, and actually I really enjoyed it the second time. I don't know why, but it now just makes me think of Okinawa. I've only ever had Goya Chanpuru there, and it is a famous Okinawan dish. And I loved Okinawa. It has those really chill island vibes, so I wanted to bring just a little bit of that back with me up to Tokyo. Goya Chanpuru usually has meat in it, but I don't personally feel like the meat adds much to the dish, and seeing as we already have tofu in there as our protein, today we're going to be making a vegetarian version with kombu dashi and green peppers. I personally feel that it tastes just as good, if not better, and a little less salty. But I'm really excited to show you this island dish, so let's get started. So these are the ingredients that we'll be using today to make our Goya Chanpuru. We've got a few different ingredients to take away some of the bitterness, but the most important ingredients are the tofu and of course the Goya itself. And in place of our meat, we're going to be using 2 green peppers. We're going to start off by making our vegetarian kombu dashi broth. Kombu is usually sold hard because it is a dried form of kelp, which is a type of seaweed. So to help some of the umami flavors to come out, we're going to cut it before soaking it in water. If you want to buy some kombu, I've put a link in the description below. You may notice that there is a white powdery substance on your kombu, but this is nothing to worry about. This is not mold or dirt, this is actually something called mannitol. Mannitol is a type of slightly sweet crystalline alcohol, which is found naturally on many plants. We don't want to get rid of this because it's actually a big part of what will flavour the dashi broth. So first soak it in room temperature water for at least 30 minutes, or up to 3 hours, after which point it will look something like this. Then we're going to put it onto the stovetop and set that fire going. Keep an eye on this, especially if you're doing a small amount like I am. We want to take the kombu out before it starts to properly boil. Make sure that you take the kombu out straight away because otherwise you're going to end up with a weirdly gloopy mess, and it's also going to be quite bitter. Now get out a plate or shallow bowl with a concave rim. We need this because we're going to be squeezing out the water from our tofu block. We do this so that it's easier to fry and to give it a better texture with a nice golden outside. You don't need to be too careful with this because we're just going to be breaking it up later. So get your firm tofu block and cover it in a few sheets of kitchen paper, or alternatively with a clean kitchen towel. Then place something flat and heavy on top. I'm just using my cutting board and an omelette pan, and leave that for about an hour. This is what mine looked like after about half an hour. As you can see, it's kind of squished and there's a lot of liquid coming out. So I'm just going to drain some of that liquid and then I'm going to leave it for another half an hour. In the meantime, let's get out our Goya. We are going to be using the outer skin of the Goya, so make sure that it's clean before cutting off either end. Then cut it down the middle and open it up. Pretty weird, right? The inside is pretty white and spongy, and the seeds are almost in a kind of mesh. This is the most bitter part of the Goya, and so we're going to be taking it out. You can do this quite easily with a spoon. And as I said, the inside is quite foamy and springy, and it's kind of fun to touch, but we're just going to discard this. And this is what you'll be left with. So now we're going to cut this into slices. Each slice should be about 1/2 centimeter in thickness. When cutting the Goya, I found that it was easier to hold it in its original U shape, like this. When you push it down flat, I found that there was quite a lot more resistance. Then once you've chopped them all up, we want to try and get rid of as much of the bitter flavour as possible. So to do that, we're going to cover them with about a tablespoon each of salt and sugar and leave them for 10 minutes. You could also add some sake here, but I'm going to be doing that later. And just make sure that everything is nice and well mixed. Then, instead of our meat, we're going to be using green peppers today, so cut off the tops and then take out the insides. Then we're just going to cut them into rectangular pieces. Now it's time to check on our tofu. I've removed all of the excess water, so now it feels a little bit firmer and a bit more compressed. So I've removed the paper and now we're just going to rip it up into bite-sized chunks. You can of course cut this up with a knife, but the ways that I've seen Goya Chanpuru have mostly been with this kind of rough exterior. And to be honest, I think it gives it a little bit more character. And the last thing to prepare before cooking is to just beat an egg. Hooray! Now it's time to get to cooking. First, we're just going to pour about 1 or 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil into a flat-bottomed frying pan. Then turn on the heat and place in your tofu. Be careful here because if you're putting in the tofu on a high heat, then it might start to splatter because it does still have a high water content. Then we're just going to give them a good old shake and make sure that everything is nice and separated. Then we just want to leave them on a high heat for a few minutes until the bottoms are a nice golden brown. Then we're just going to start flipping them over. I suppose this part is a little bit boring because you have to wait a few minutes between each flip. But we're trying to get every side of the tofu a nice golden brown. Like this. Now take the tofu pieces out of the pan and put them to one side. There's still some oil left over, but now we're going to add about a tablespoon of sesame oil. This will help get rid of some of the bitterness of the Goya. And now we're going to place in all of our Goya pieces. Some recipes might say that you should rinse the Goya first. However, I feel that the salt and sugar gives it a much more balanced feel, so I keep it on. Cook these on a medium to low heat because we don't want those sugars to start burning. Just keep flipping them and cooking them until the white parts have become mostly translucent. Here's a raw piece for comparison. Once they're translucent, place them with the tofu to one side. Now add in a little bit more sesame oil and your peppers and just cook those down a bit, and then you can add everything back in. And now we're just going to add 3 tablespoons of our nice homemade Kombu dashi, 1 tablespoon of sake, and 1 tablespoon of soy sauce. We don't want to add too much soy sauce because it will kind of overwhelm the dish a bit and it will make everything a much browner colour. So just combine and cook that on a medium-high heat so that everything doesn't get too liquidy, and then we're just going to add the eggs. Pouring the egg all over everything and then letting it set on the bottom for 10 to 15 seconds before giving the pan a big shake. The idea is not to have one giant bit of scrambled egg, but to have it combined and part of the dish as a whole. And now all we have left to do is to plate it up. And there we have it, our beautiful, summery Okinawan Goya Chanpuru. I really love the contrast of the bite of the Goya to the soft and almost milky flavors of the tofu. If you've learned anything today or you're thinking of making this dish yourself, then don't forget to give me a like and subscribe for a new recipe every Sunday. But that's it for today. See you next week. Bye!